Hey, Diana, did you know that leaving your office can make you money?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, the podcast for lawyers and law firm leaders about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my co-host, my number one, my COO, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Mark?
All right, so this is day 2 of podcasting. We're squeezing 2 in 2 days to kind of get caught up. And probably by now people have noticed that we took about a 2-week break, but now we're back rolling. So
yeah, let's hope that they notice.
Well, if they didn't notice, that would be bad. I will say that one time the Successful Barrister newsletter, the printed newsletter, which comes out 6 times a year, which is extremely popular, and you should all send me your email or send me your address and subscribe. We will mail it to you for free. I one time decided that it was a lot of work, and we decided to cut it down from 6 issues a year to 4 episodes a year. You don't call them episodes. 4 printings, issues a year. And everybody got mad at me. They thought they had dropped off the list because they realized the frequency wasn't what it was. And so I realized, oops, we need to fix that. So to fix that, now we have 2 issues a year are what we call greatest hits issues, which is a lot less work to produce. Mm-hmm. So we are now back up to 6 issues a year because our fans demanded it.
Fans? You have fans, Mark?
Our fans demanded it. No. So, what the fans demand is what you get. So
yes, absolutely. So today, Mark, we are talking about the Fireproof conference that we went to, which you kind of teased in our last episode, talking a little bit about what we're going to talk about.
The one we recorded just yesterday.
Just yesterday. Yeah, my low eye is suffering today, but that's okay. I am excited to talk about some of the things that we learned, or at least our 3 favorite sessions, including the topic everybody seems to talk about today, which is MSOs.
Managed Service Organizations.
Yep, it's the hot topic. I think you can get anybody to join a webinar if you just put MSO in the title these days.
That
We're all
AI
curious.
Or an MSO AI, an AI MSO.
AI is kind of the less shiny object compared to MSOs these days. But Mark, why don't we start by what is fireproof? It's a fun word, but what is fireproof?
Okay, so our friend Mike Morris and John Knockhazel, who are out of Detroit, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, personal injury firm in Detroit, the biggest advertising lawyer in Detroit, at least that I'm aware of anyway. So during the pandemic, John and Mike wrote a book called Fireproof. Now, I started reading Fireproof, and I immediately said, wow, this sounds a lot like the book Traction, which we have talked about a lot on this podcast. And then when I went further in it, that's traction. And at the very end of it, I was reading sort of the epilogue, and it realized that Gino Wickman, who wrote Traction, was Mike Morris's coach.
Still is.
And still is to this day, is his coach. So I'm like, well, no wonder it sounds just like Traction. So it turns out Mike actually sort of quasi-licensed the EOS concept, which comes from the book Traction, with the permission of Gino Wickman, and they created Fireproof, which is sort of EOS, but EOS specifically for lawyers. And some of the terminology is slightly different. Instead of rocks, they have flames, and there might be a few other terminology differences. But it's basically EOS for lawyers, and I think very specifically, mostly for PI lawyers. So they turned it into a group coaching thing. With masterminds and all of this other stuff. Masterminds are all the rage these days. So they turned it in. They started, I think, 2020. So 20.
I went in 2021 to
2021.
to the NTL
It
business.
was right in the middle of
Development, which is right in
COVID.
there.
They started virtually right in the middle of COVID, and we actually did Fireproof virtually the very first year that it came out.
It was a different era or a different version of Fireproof now. So Fireproof is not only the name of the book, but it's also the name of their coaching group, and it was the Fireproof conference that Mark and I just attended. So it is now all encompassing the whole umbrella of what their service offerings are.
Right. So they offer coaching, they offer masterminds, they offer, seminar summits like we went to in Austin. We say we're kind enough to have it close to us, so we didn't have to get on a plane. That was very nice.
That was very nice. I didn't have to worry about my liquids.
Yeah.
But I do think that since we were not masterminds, but since we were Fireproof members, they've evolved to what they are now, which is the coaching and mastermind focus, which I think is a very sweet spot niche, if I can put all those words together, for a service offering. Because there's a lot of coaching groups out there. There are a lot of mastermind groups out there. But having someone, and I think this is their unique offering, is having someone who actually sits in your weekly level 10 meetings, or whatever they call the weekly level 10 meetings. They offer this third party independent party to sit in, because there is something in talking to the Fireproof staff and the Fireproof team members, there is something to having to say, I mean, today we just got out of our level 10 and it's like, no, didn't do that. Nope, didn't do that. Didn't do that. Oh, is that still me? Nope,
Oh,
didn't
crap.
do that either. But if you're doing that in front of a third party, you're like, oh, there's a different level of accountability.
It's called the shame factor.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
You'd be ashamed. I mean, I can screw up in front of you all day long, and I'm fine with it. But if I screwed
Totally.
up in front of my coach, I would be shamed.
Yep.
That
So
would be head between the tail.
it is a different level of accountability. And I do think that a third party can push you in ways that you can't get from each other after a certain level. So, Mark, what do you think about why it's so important to get coached and to participate in masterminds?
So the whole purpose of coaching and masterminding is to have somebody to, number one, challenge your ideas and have you come up with the plan. What do you want to do? What do you want to execute on? And then hold you accountable to it. That's the cadence. The cadence of accountability is, you meet regularly. In regular EOS, we meet with our implementer quarterly. In the Fireproof program, I mean, they're really intense. They're meeting with you once a week. They're actually in your weekly meeting, which I thought was a little bit wow. When I first heard that, they're like, damn, that's intense. I don't know if I need that much accountability in my life.
Yeah, it's almost, Mark was like, oh, I don't want you.
I don't want people to
I don't
see
want
my
you-
dirty laundry, okay?
Exactly. And I think that is maybe one of our takeaways here, is that coaching isn't necessarily for everybody. And that's okay too. I mean, actually, that was my MSO lesson.
Yeah.
But I do, sorry, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say this, the kind of the core idea behind it is to get out there and learn from firms that are bigger than you, that have been around longer than you. You are the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. Well, so hang around some really successful people. So like hanging around, Mike Morrison, John Knockhazel, and learn from all the things that they've done. I think they are a $300 million a year firm. $300 million a year. That is some serious cash running through their piggy bank.
And a lot of systems to make that happen, repeatedly, over and over again.
Strategery.
But just the consistency at which they must be operating, even to the lowest level, is just amazing to me.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's not necessarily, and I heard this from a friend, I mean, I say friend, a colleague in the industry, about, I just come to make sure that I'm actually doing the things that they say that they're doing. And it's just a benchmark for me to, make sure that nothing's really changed. Well, I mean, of course, nothing's really changed. There's only so many ways you can run a profit and loss statement. There's only so many ways you can compensate an attorney. But what I think the real value of masterminds and coaching is to make sure when you get into those rooms with the other firms, like you said, that are bigger than you, to challenge you. I think one of the things that you and I talked about if I can, because I was on my third tequila at that point.
That you were, oh my God, that night you had
I was on my third tequila.
you were flying high that night.
I was, but you know what? It was a beautiful Austin evening.
And you did not hold back either.
I didn't.
You let it fly.
Because when you get to Mark, you and I have been together 5.5 years, and at some point we have the same arguments over and over again, right? I mean, would you not say you could probably anticipate what I'm going to say to you, and I can definitely anticipate what you're going to say to me?
Pretty much.
And that closed loop can lead to not only a fixed, closed mindset, but also inhibits the growth of the firm. It inhibits the growth of the individuals as professionals. And so when you get into a room of other people, that I think is the true value of coaching and of masterminds. Yeah, absolutely. Mike and John the whole Fireproof team did a great job of synthesizing some really topical information for the industry. But the real value is when you continue to learn.
Right. I think the other thing that was really great about going to all of these things, and this one was no different, is that you actually get to spend some time with some vendors that have some really cool products and some really cool services and ideas. And of course, the first thing I do when I get back is I make phone calls and set up appointments to talk with these people further and more depth. I mean, at the conference, you try to talk to people, but, there's a million people around and everybody's got a cocktail in hand and can't get that serious with it, but the real key is to figure out who you're really interested to talk to and then make that appointment as soon as you get back to the office. So I've got one today. I've got one later this week. I think we have another one that's we're trying to schedule, but you get to meet people and then you follow up with them.
You do like your shiny objects, Mark.
I do like my shiny objects. And we're going to talk about a couple of those shiny objects here later in the program.
Yeah. So today we are going to talk about our 3 favorite sessions from the Fireproof Conference, lessons we learned, including everyone's pressing issue of MSOs.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So we'll get to it right when we get back.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
All right, and we're back. So we're going to start off with the session on MSOs. That was Mike Morse himself and John Knockhazel. And I did not know that they had already established an MSO. So again,
I didn't either.
That was sort of a surprise. And yeah, we did that several years ago. I'm like, oh.
Like years ago, everyone's talking about Dudley and how they did it this calendar year?
So the news was Dudley DeBosier just established an MSO, a managed service organization in their firm, big firm out of Louisiana. And he sold, I think, 49%, and I could be slightly wrong. He still has the majority ownership in the MSO, but he sold 49%, I believe.
Of the law firm. He sold.
No, of the MSO. He still owns the entire law firm.
Okay.
He sold 49% of the MSO to private equity, which, of course, there's a whole thing about that, but he did it, and that was big news. But Knockhazel and John Morse did it, several years ago. Now, they haven't sold any of it, to my understanding. They still own it all.
So let's back up and just make sure we're talking about the same thing here,
Okay.
Mark. For everyone who doesn't know, what is an MSO and what are we talking about
All
setting
right.
up?
So this is my rudimentary understanding. Let me back up. Here's the problem. So the problem is that law firms can only be owned by lawyers, which creates several problems. Number one, it limits your pool of people that you can sell your firm to. You can only sell to other lawyers, unlike if I was a muffler shop or if I owned a grocery store or anything like that. I could sell it to literally
Or even just any other professional services like dentists and doctors.
Well, no, they're slightly different, but I was going to get to the dentists and the doctors. because they had the same problem as we did until recently, but they figured it out before we did. So what an MSO is we're really basically copying what the dentists and the doctors figured out about 20 years ago, which is, since we have the problem that we can't sell our law firm, or we can't pass it on, to our family, our children, or whatever, unless they're lawyers, that creates, an inheritance problem as well, which is my problem. I have none of my kids in my family are lawyers, and, knowing them, not likely ever to be lawyers. So how do you preserve the wealth that you build up, within the firm? How do you transfer that to your children, your estate, if they're not lawyers? So the doctors and the dentists figured this out about 20 years ago, and they have established what are called managed service organizations, where they basically split off the back office of the firm, meaning the marketing department, the intake or sales department, the back office function, the accounting functions, the finance functions, everything that's not specifically what a dentist or a doctor does. And therefore, that MSO, that separate entity that runs, say, the doctor's office, can be sold to anybody they want to, not limited to doctors or dentists. So this is what they've been doing for about 20 years. It has now come to the legal industry that we are, everything that law does is always 20 years behind the rest of the world. I mean, we're very slow to innovate in the legal field. We're very, we just are. We're half the lawyers out there are still writing on yellow pads. Let's face it, they are. So this is now starting to come to legal. The other solution has been 2 states, and I think Puerto Rico and DC maybe allow non-ownership of law firms. Arizona, Utah, and I'm not sure about Puerto Rico or DC, but I think they might. So those are states that have actually experimented with ABSs, which are alternative business structures for lawyers that allow non-attorney ownership. And a lot of people thought that once those 2 dominoes fell, that the rest of the states would fall in line and would start allowing non-attorney ownership of law firms. Turns out it is kind of boomerang, and it's gone the opposite way. A lot of states have gone in the other direction and have made it, have really fought against that. And I sort of understand the reasons why, but so if you're not going to have non-attorney ownership under an ABS model, is that what they call it? What can you do? Well, now the solution is the managed service organization. And that's what, and Chad Dudley just did it, and it really made a lot of news about it. And I think a lot of people are now looking at it. We're looking at it. I'm not certain that I'm really going to go down that route, but it helps solve a problem. How do you capture the value of your law firm at fair market value when you're otherwise limited in how you can sell it or how you can pass it to your family upon your death? And that's what an MSO does. Now, I'm not sure if I explained it all that well, but I think I've explained the problem that we're trying to solve with it.
I do think you've mentioned the point or the problem that we're all trying to solve very well. And I think that the setting up of the 2 different entities and the way that John and Mike presented it in the tiered structure, in that the law firm retains the attorney-client relationship, all professional judgment, all of the legal services is handled through the law firm, whereas the MSO handles the business side of the firm. And the way that they put that on the PowerPoint was very helpful into understanding what we were doing there. So you've talked a lot about why law firm owners are moving to an MSO. And one of the things, we were having breakfast with John one morning, and it's beautiful to be able to, I think John Lockhazel's every COO's, just like, oh my gosh, if I could be John one day. And so to be able to go to an event and have breakfast with him and just sit down with him, and we did that a couple of times over the course of the 2.5 days. It was very cool to do that. But he said, at least off during breakfast, that one of the other benefits of creating the MSO relationship was that it made the law firm an entity that the other attorneys could then afford to buy into.
Right.
Which I think is a huge point that people don't talk about, because you just mentioned, Mark, that Mike Morse's had $300 million. And actually, during the session, again, and one of the unintended benefits that we didn't realize when we sat in there was a guy from private equity sitting in the audience and who was able to kind of get into this informal discussion from a private equity perspective on EBITDA and value, or, and X and all these different types of things enterprise value and those different types of things that private equity speak. But when you split the firm the way that we're talking about doing now with an MSO, then suddenly the law firm itself, which lawyers can buy into, now becomes a much more affordable entity.
I mean, just imagine that if his annual revenue is $300 million, what is the valuation on a firm that can generate $300 million in revenue? It's probably close to $1 billion in valuation. Well, what lawyer can afford to buy that?
Even a portion of it, yeah.
Even a portion of it. Who could? So that's the problem: is you have something so expensive that nobody can buy. So how does he capture his value? He has to be able to sell the majority of it to somebody who actually can afford that. Well, that means private equity.
And of course, now, though, the lingering questions that no one, I think, has the answer to is, and the question that you asked was, what is to keep the law firm and the MSO together in a relationship after the passing of the named partner, right? So it is not the answer to any of your succession questions, because it's still very, I think, even though Mike Morse did it 3 years ago or how many ever years ago, I do think it is still a relatively new, untested structure.
So how do you bind them together? That was my big question.
And I think
there was an agreement. I forgot there was a name for it. It had a fancy
That's an
name.
MSA, but that's just an MSA that
A
ties
master
it
service
together.
agreement. Okay.
But I don't know that it answers your question, because you can't link two entities firmly together that way. It's just a contract between two entities. And so one of the things, so I do think that there are a lot of unanswered questions. So it is something to consider in your succession planning, I think, but probably not the answer to everything. Even Mark doesn't know that it's the answer to his.
There is risk in
succession
everything.
planning.
And anytime you create complexity, you're creating a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of risk. But I would expect that it's going to shake out over the next couple of years, and we'll get a little bit more clarity about it. But anyway, something to think about. It was really interesting, and I've just noticed that the big firms are doing it, and I understand why. That's the only way they can really capture the value of their firm. Otherwise, it's almost like they're too big to sell at some point. So the only way to sell it is to break it up and sell it in chunks that are sellable.
So I think it would be a bad lawyer if I didn't mention some of the ethical considerations of an MSO. So I just want to throw out a couple that they mentioned during their presentation. So, for example, you want to make sure that there's no fee sharing, that the MSO is compensated by fixed fees only. And, of course, that the legal services are retained, that there is attorney oversight only on that there's not any attorneys overseeing the non-legal work, right? That they have to truly function as two separate entities. And of course, that everybody's bound by the privileged and the confidentiality requirements.
I don't think the biggest thing, the reverse of that, is this private equity can't come in and direct legal at all. They have no say-so whatsoever. And then where that could happen, and this is a thing that's happened recently, is particularly in the mass torts area. When you're representing single individuals on cases, that's pretty clear cut. But when you're representing tens of thousands of people in mass torts, and you're really the private equity is not so much concerned about the individual litigation. They're concerned about the docket as a whole. And if they want, they could try to say, hey, you need to take the settlement because we need to cash out, when the lawyers would say, no, we need to hold out for more money. That's where you have to have that separation, and making sure. It's always been the argument why you shouldn't have private ownership and private equity in legal, is that you don't want undue influence from non-lawyers just making business decisions that are in the best interest of the law firm, not necessarily in the best interest of the client. So, I think
making the legal decision, or influencing the legal decisions, right? Which is what you were talking about with the legal.
And mass torts is just a perfect example of where that could happen. So, but anyway, interesting question. So we'll see how it shakes out.
Yep. And so then now we're going to move to your favorites, and one of your favorite sessions from there, which I in my very ops brain wasn't really that. I don't know that I was that excited about it, but
Well,
you are.
okay, so well, they had pretty commercials and everything, and they were comparing
Shiny
commercials.
objects. I mean,
Shiny
do
objects.
you not realize that you like shiny objects?
Squirrel.
And I mean, yeah, you like just shiny objects, and like even knowing that it's just a shiny object, it doesn't deter you from wanting the shiny object.
Oh no, I want more shiny objects.
Okay, well, let's tell us about your newest shiny object, Mark.
Okay, so Nicole Bergen, she presented, her title of what she talked about was attention versus trust trade-off in PI marketing. So this was a PI presentation. But what she really did, what her firm does, is they do market research. And they are hired by various firms. In this particular case, she was hired by a PI firm, a pretty big one, to do market research in a particular market about what the community thought of, number one, this particular law firm. How did they appear in the market? What was people's opinions of them? And also they did some comparisons of different types of commercials. And what did the people think of the commercials that they were seeing on TV? And there was all sorts of commercials. There were the very studious, very calm, low-key, educational type commercials. And then there was like commercials with the Texas Hammer screaming, doing all kind of wild stuff. There was AI-generated cartoons. There were all sorts of things that she presented. But the real thing is then they went and did surveys of people to see what they actually thought of these commercials. Because, what really matters, it's not what you and I think as lawyers. Because we probably have some opinions, and we probably have some fairly negative opinions on the Texas Hammers commercials or people like that. But our opinion doesn't count, doesn't matter. It's what does the population, the target audience, what do they think about it? So I just thought it was very interesting, the science of what she did and how she brought it out and how she laid it out. And she's one of the people that I'm going to vet. I found it very interesting, and I thought it might be useful to talk to her because we're talking about reshooting our commercials. We have to reshoot them every so often. And how is our message resonating with our target market? And are there things that we could do differently to appeal more to our market, to become more memorable, to basically, get better bang for our buck for our advertising dollar. So they look at all things. They look at your TV, they'll look at your website, they'll look at, your marketing message across all platforms. So anyway, I thought that was very interesting. So she came up with her survey. She came away with these 5 critical takeaways on brand strategy. Now, this was very specific to PI, and I know not all of our listeners are PI lawyers, but they're the ones who have the buck, so they're the ones who can spend the money on these types of surveys. So what she found were, she had 5 takeaways. Number 1, accident victims are looking for reassurance. Okay, well, what does that tell you? How does that shape your marketing message? I mean, you can take that a lot of different ways. They're also looking to cut through the clutter. They're looking for something that's memorable. The Texas Hammer, 2 words, very memorable. What were some other ones that were memorable? I know you remember some of them.
No, I really don't.
Oh my
I think the
God.
shinier and louder a presentation is, the more off-putting it is to me. And I don't remember. I mean, I think I actually had to step out to take a call. This is nothing against Nicole Bergen, but I really just felt like it was just not. I don't remember some of the examples that
Right.
she used.
So she said it's very important that your marketing stand out from all the clutter because it just tends to get lost in the clutter. So that she wasn't advocating for any one particular type of ad there. She goes, it just has to stand out from the clutter. So how do you stand out from the clutter? She said building familiarity establishes trust. And that's why marketing is so important, because heavy exposure to the market establishes trust. The more they see you, the more they trust you, whether that's deserved or not. It's just a fact that it's important. She says you wanted to fuel your brand. There were 4 attributes that should be emphasized in all marketing campaigns. She was talking about PI here, so let's be real clear. She's talking about PI. Number 1, you have to state we're fighting for you. We'll get you every dollar. This is a common theme across her surveys was this is what people wanted to see. This is what people wanted to hear. You needed to show that you understood their personal issues. I can't pay my rent. I can't pay my bills. I can't, I've lost the ability to do whatever because of this accident or injury. You need to be able to explain the process and next steps. In other words, what are you going to do for me that I couldn't do for myself? And finally said you had to be empathetic and listen to their concerns. So you have to somehow subtly work these things in to your marketing. And I think we can draw some corollaries there into what we do in disability law. I think you could probably go into any area of law and kind of use the same concepts. And I think they would be applicable. I mean, they would be different if you were doing criminal law, or if you were doing estate planning or family. But that you want somebody, that's what you want from a lawyer. You want somebody that's going to fight for you, because you don't go to a lawyer unless you get in a fight. So I think these principles kind of cut across all practice areas. Then there was an interesting question. This is number 5 that I didn't really understand. There was a question about whether AI-generated ads or more conventionally filmed ads were more effective. And I'm not sure that we got a clear answer other than to say that AI-generated ads were not necessarily off-putting as you might think they would be, as long as they're done sort of in the right context. So the AI-generated ads that she showed were meant to be sort of over the top. They were meant to be sort of quirky and funny and loud. So in that context, that people didn't mind that they were clearly AI generated. As opposed to if they were meant to be more serious, more educational in tone, more, more stoic, then if they were AI generated, clearly AI generated, they were a little bit more off-putting because it just didn't fit the tone of the message. But it was interesting in how they came up with that, comparing some traditional ads with AI-generated ads. There were some really great Super Bowl ads that were put out by some lawyers that were clearly AI-generated, but they were really just well done, and really, quite frankly, they were sort of catchy and funny. And they were just meant to build brand. They weren't meant to be like direct response marketing, but they were really well done. So anyway, I thought it was interesting. And the reason I want to talk to her is I just want to know, are we hitting the right marks when we advertise for disability law? Are we saying the right buzzwords? Are we appealing to the right emotions? Because we really don't know, because we don't really have any competitors to look at, really. We're sort of it. So I don't know if we're doing it right or not. We could be doing it brilliantly, or we could suck, but we don't know because we have no standard of comparison to look at, which is kind of why I'm interested in this concept.
I think, the takeaway there was that we have that to know that don't trust that your marketing is doing what you think it is. If you don't hire a third party to check that for you, just maybe do a comparison test with some of your competitors, or because I think we do have SSD competitors that do, or that run TV. So I do think that you can absolutely check and see what they're doing and seeing how that's working for them. But I think that the idea isn't don't just operate in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, we're going to find out. So I'm hoping they'll cut me a deal.
Of course. Because it depends how expensive your new shiny object is, Mark.
I don't know.
You're still playing on your January shiny objects. So I think that moving to our third topic, if we have time, and, I threw in one because, of course, it's my outline. So we're doing a touchy-feely topic on hiring, training, and culture by Jen Harvala. She's a she's a Mike Morse employee, and also a fireproof coach. And so I've always enjoyed hearing her speak and just learning a lot from her. And so she talked about hiring and training and culture in terms of building blocks, which makes sense to me. And the way she laid it out was brilliantly. So, for example, starting with hiring, one of the stats that she threw out there was it is the first time ever that we've had 5 generations in the workforce at one time.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, and just think about that for a second. And your workforce, when I
Working with
say,
my great-great-grandpappy.
I mean, that's probably,
Technically,
I
I'm not because
mean,
I'm in the middle of this. I'm towards the
well,
end.
yeah, I mean, that's probably the way they think of you, if you think
Oh,
about
am I the
that.
great-great-grandpappy?
Well, if you think about your workforce, that's
Where's my cane?
what I would really encourage you to do is think about your workforce and where they fall in that generational gap of generation, but also then where you fall in that. Because, yeah, I mean, I'm sure when I can't relate, what was it the other day? Oh, when Melanie and we did a big celebration here at the office for her 30-year anniversary with you. And there were so many, and I say kids, and I don't mean that derogatorily, but there were so many employees that were walking around saying, wow, when Melanie started with Mark, I wasn't even born yet. And I'm like, you need to go. You just
Yes.
need to go. Go in your corner.
You're fired.
You're
You're
in
fired.
timeout. I don't know what I can legally or like HR wise do to you, but oh my gosh, please stop saying that. But that is very real. And the way that they respond to problems or obstacles, it's different across each generation. And I think that hearing that just reminded me of how important it is to really tailor your training, tailor your new initiatives to each of the generations in your workforce. And so, and one of the things that she polled the audience. They did a great job of polling the audience. So you got some live stats during each of the presentations, but about how many of us were doing pre-hire tests and which ones we were doing. But one of the things that Jen did a great job of are green flags and red flags when you're hiring, which I kind of knew intuitively, but were really great to kind of put pen to paper of what's a green flag and what's a red flag when you're
So what is a
interviewing for
red flag?
candidates.
Give me some red flags.
Just for me, I called it not ownership. So when you ask them about a problem in the workplace and they blame somebody
Blame
else,
somebody else.
they don't really
Oh,
take, I mean, in my
yeah.
head, I don't think that's what Jen called it, so I'm not going to attribute that to Jen, but just really not really taking ownership of an issue in the workplace or not owning what they learned from the situation. And, we've always, I mean, historically, depending on what generation you're in, you probably hired for the resume, right? How long have you been at certain places? Are there gaps in the resume? What skills do you put in the resume? But now what we're really looking for are those intangibles that are harder to quantify, things like learning agility and adaptability, because the way that you're doing your particular practice may not be the same in 6 months, in a year, definitely not in 2 years. With AI and technology advancing the way that it is, you want someone who's going to be adaptable and agile and willing to adapt with you, regardless of which generation that they fall under. And so rather than, okay, well, tell me, you were here for 3.5 years. Why did that position end? It's more about, okay,
Well,
tell
you
me.
should ask that.
Well, it's still a screening question, but it's more, tell me, what's the last podcast you listened to? What's the last book you read? And
What's a
those,
book?
Yeah, I mean, book you listened to?
Yeah.
Those types of things. It shows that they're really still willing to learn and invest in themselves.
What have you learned lately?
Exactly. And so one of the things then that she moved to was training, and that was just a great reinforcement for me. I used to be really good at doing 30, 60, 90s with our new hires, and I have recommitted to doing 30, 60, 90s with our new hires. I kind of got away from that just because of the growth of the firm in the last year. But what Jen was talking about is not just doing a checkpoint, during their 2-week onboarding.
By the way, I need to do your 90-day evaluation here.
Yeah, 5.5 days years later, 5.5 years later.
No, I need. It's on my list.
It's on your list? Okay. Well, then I hope do you have your checklist for your 90-day?
I'll make it up as I go.
I'm sure you will. But I think it is important to not just do like, okay, 30-day onboarding, check, done, you're onboarded, see ya. You want to make sure you have a 60-day check-in because their needs then are different, and 90-day check-ins just to kind of see how they're settling in, both in terms of their position as well as culturally. How are they doing as a cultural fit for your firm? Because it's really you may not figure that out. I mean, sometimes you may figure it out in the first day, but you might not know some of the gaps within until your 90th day. And I think that one of the questions that I took away that Because those 60-day check-ins, I mean, it's like really a 2-minute check-in.
Right.
How are you doing? Do you need anything? Don't forget that.
You know how to turn your computer on yet?
Well, I mean, let's hope, is your computer working? I think that was one of those things that you
Have
don't
you
wanna
found the
find out,
bathroom yet? I'm just
that you haven't figured out yet. Is, are you getting enough time with your training manager? That's a very good question. I think that we don't ask, we just assume everything else, right? It's not, well, it's the questions we ask in that 60 check-in. Have you completed all of your training? How are you settling in? Do you have the resources you need to do your job? But
You
you
hate your
don't
boss.
ask, are you getting enough time with your training manager? And that's a very easy question for them to answer, especially at 60 days. You want a candid response, and that's a good way. No, I can always use more time with my manager. That's easy for them to say no to. And then, of course, one of the things that I love that she mentioned was a systems document. It seems like, and of course, Mark always makes fun of me because I talk so fast. But it
Damn, do you
doesn't
not.
matter if, when I was onboarding, it doesn't matter how slowly I talked. And if I gave them the pages and I used pretty logos for the Litify case management software, now I'm just intentionally trying to talk slow. They'd come back to me later. I'm like, what is Litify again? I'm like, but there's a logo. And I told you it's the case management
Here's
software.
the problem. The Litify logo says Salesforce. That's the problem. That's
Well,
confusing.
And it's confusing, but also, I mean, it is literally from a fire hose that first day, because they don't know where the bathroom is. They're like, I just need to remember how to get to the bathroom. And you expect to remember the logo for the case management software. So it did give us some
I, the other day, had the
opportunities.
hardest time figuring out where to find toilet paper in this building. So I'm just saying, even I don't know everything. So
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's a very humbling to hear from
I
you, Mark.
finally asked.
And then, of course, at
So
the
everybody
end,
knew my business.
we all talk. Well, I'm glad you asked.
Yes.
I mean, it's very humbling. So one of the things that, of course, she ties it into is all culture. And I love how she defined it as the emotional outcome of your hiring and training systems in a world where everywhere you and I go, Mark, all we're getting pitched is AI. And we did get pitched AI, and there was some AI talk at this at this conference. I loved the emphasis on just the basics of running a law firm. John
Be
Knockhazel
human
did
beings,
and to
yes.
be human beings, but John Knockhazel went back to, I think there was something called the cult classics, like, just like, how he compensates his attorneys and those things. And the way that you can see them over and over again, it doesn't matter, because you yourself are at a different point of your career, so you take it in differently. And so I think, and I didn't get the full quote, but the way Jen closed her presentation was that hiring sets the foundation, but leadership sustains it. And I think that regardless of where you are in your firm, that right there that's the essence of what we all do.
All right. So when we come back, we're going to give you our 5 takeaways from the Fireproof Conference. This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Remember, Marc is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze. Okay, and we're back. And during the break, we did look up the dispute that we had earlier about whether doctors or dentists could sell their
Non-dentists and non-doctors
could own dental practices or medical practices. And apparently we're both sort of right, although I think I'm righter, but
Of course
it's a
you do.
state by state question.
Well, I mean, I don't know where you. Okay. So Mark,
Just because I could say so, I think I'm righter. I like the word
well,
righter.
and you write
as
my
opposed-
paycheck, so you
as
can be
opposed to
righter
wronger.
if you would like to be
I'm
righter.
righter, you're wronger.
And if that helps you. So I'm excited because we have 5 takeaways to my outline today.
Yes.
And I get to start with number 1.
Ooh.
So my number 1 takeaway is read Fireproof. I was actually in an Atticus Ropes meeting the other day, and they hadn't actually heard of the book. And so I sometimes forget that not everybody's heard of Fireproof. Read the book. Traction is a tome, and I like the word tome because it's such a serious book. It implies a book that could be used as a doorstop. And it's not that book because it is a light paperback book, but it is dense. Like you read one page of Traction and you're like, I think I'm good for the rest of the evening. You could read Fireproof on the beach. Like it's just easy enough read, flag the pages you want. And they give great examples of scorecards and all the things that
We
they
call
do.
them jumbotrons.
But read Fireproof. It's a good read.
Okay. So my takeaway, number 2 on our list, is to find a coach or a mastermind. You're only as good as the people or the firms that you surround yourself with. So we've talked about this a lot on this podcast. I can think of 3 or 4 off the top of my head organizations. Obviously, there's Fireproof, what we just talked about, which has both coaching and masterminds. There is Atticus, which we've talked about a lot, that we're both members of, have both coaching and group programs. I know they hate it when I call them a quasi-mastermind, but I still think I would call them a quasi-mastermind, sort of a moderated mastermind. They don't like that term. I've said that before in front of Mark Powers, and he shut me down. But whatever. He's not. It's my podcast.
You're a writer.
It's not his. I am writer, and he's wronger. There. But Atticus is a great organization for that. Pilma. We're going to Pilma next month. Pilma also has coaching and I'm not sure about coaching, but I know they have masterminds.
Yes.
And of course they have a lot of activities and a lot of, I would say group coaching. They have a lot of virtual programs during the month. I think probably
Very helpful.
Very helpful. I know Cassidy Lewis runs one. Mickey Love runs one. I'm blanking on the other one. Carrie Colby White has one. So some really smart people have some really good monthly programs with Pilma.
And Ken himself, of course.
Ken himself, yeah, right. Let's see who else is there. There's Ben. I'm not a member of Ben Glass's group, Great Legal Marketing anymore, but Ben runs a mastermind as well. So heard of his, and then Fisher runs a mastermind.
Mastermind Experience,
yes.
There's lots of options.
There's lots of options out there. So that would be number 2 on my list. Find one, get in it. Get around some smart people and learn some stuff.
My number 3 takeaway is that MSOs aren't for everyone. Don't be like Mark and ignore the shiny object. Find a succession plan that actually works for you. And I'm kind of obviously tongue in cheek in the very essence of this podcast, but when I say ignore the shiny object, it could work for you. There are certain conditions in which the MSO is a viable opportunity. These established firms with very high revenue numbers, obviously repeatable income, steady income, because the first thing that a private equity group is going to do is to take a deep dive into your financials. So if you don't have that steady, repeatable income or just a long runway of financials, probably build up to that and look for other alternatives for succession planning.
I'm going to start an MSO and I'm going to sell out to Jeff Bezos. We're going to become the Amazon of legal.
And
you're going to run it.
Okay.
Yeah. You're going to have next day delivery for all legal.
That brings the whole domino.
We're going to put everything in your cart. One button checkout.
That brings the whole new essence to the Domino Pizza Tracker.
Yes, it will.
All right, Mark, what's number 4?
Number 4, consider a brand awareness study to assess if your brand is what you think it is. So this goes back to the presentation I was talking about. It's not what you think about yourself that matters. It's what does your audience, what does your public think about you that matters. So sometimes we're just reading a book about self-awareness. Sometimes you need to be self-aware about your own brand and about how you come across in the marketplace. So I would strongly consider thinking about that.
All right. And the number 5 takeaway for today is to evaluate your training program to make sure it makes sense for a new hire or even someone who's got their name on the door to find where the toilet paper is.
Right. Where's the toilet paper? Where are the barf bags?
Where's the AED machine?
Oh, the AED machine is very important.
Very important.
Because it's probably going to get used on me. So y'all all need to know where the hell that damn thing is.
And how to work it.
Yeah.
And we did so well to not be explicit for a while. So.
Oh, shit. That's bad.
All of them all in one sentence, Mark. All of them. So I think that the training program, make sure whenever you do create it, ask one of your newest hires to say, okay, does all this make sense? How can I improve it? Because I've been here 5.5 years, and I think that was Jen's point. She's been with Mike for 22 years or something crazy. Like she's like, I don't know what it's like to be a new hire. All of the things that I know, I take for granted that I know because of my institutional knowledge. Even at 5.5 years, I don't have 22 years, obviously. At 5.5 years, I just assume a lot of things. So evaluate your training program and training materials, your onboarding packet, everything, your schedules from that of a new hire. I used to put so much in a new hire's first week. And now what I think I did in 1 week, I now spread out over 2 or 3 weeks because it was just too much. They weren't intaking it all. They weren't remembering it.
Wow. So I think you should test your new hires like every day. Give them a multiple choice test.
There's nothing more stressful than going to a pop quiz every day.
Well, this is not Club Med here. I mean, it's not meant to be, it doesn't have to be stressful. Just, hey, do you understand these concepts? Claude will create some lovely multiple choice questions for you.
And Waybook does that as well. So it is definitely something that we're incorporating, not every day though.
Okay. Well, we'll find more ways to torture people. So anyway, we really need
work
to
for Marc Whitehead and Associates.
We really need to schedule your 90-day eval. So
okay, I'll put that on the calendar.
Okay, put that on the calendar.
You're gonna laugh when you see 90-day eval on your calendar.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to fail. All right. With that, we've got to get out of here. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. Where legal legends, I can't talk today. Where legal legends are made. This is what happens when you podcast 2 days in a row. I'm Mark.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. And be sure to hit that share button to share this episode with somebody out there that you think may find it useful or need a little bit of inspiration. For more episodes and or more resources, visit us at successfulbarrister.com or hit me up at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Marc is spelled with a C. You want to give your email address?
Oh, yeah, Diana@marcwhitehead.com. Diana, Diana @marc.com.
Okay. Not Diana, no.
No, sir.
Nope. Okay.
That one won't get through.
Don't get there. And don't forget to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability law firm, at www.disabilitydenials.com. And with that, run a practice, not a prison. See you.
Bye.